Wow, it's very bright. Hi, everyone. Thanks for sticking around until 4:20 to watch my talk. Really appreciate it. My name is Julia. I work at Airbnb. And I was actually thinking, how should I frame, what should I talk exactly, given the title? And I was kind of debating whether or not I should share my personal experience, because we all have different experiences in life. But I realized that it's probably going to be the way that I'll be able to teach you something today, because the way that we learn is by talking to other people, by sharing our experiences, and by challenging each other. So I decided to share what I learned by working at Airbnb as a large organization, especially coming from a smaller startup like Ship. Things are different when you at a larger org like that, and I'd like to share my experience with you today. I'm also pretty excited to see that the talks today were so human. Ryan talked about diversity, Cameron talked about working with people earlier. I was really inspired by those talks, and I think my talk will fit also into this kind of category, and hopefully you'll learn something from my experience working at Airbnb. So, at Airbnb, if you ever used the product or even heard about it, you probably kind of realize, if you think about it, that Airbnb is a lot about trust. On the platform, we need to make sure that we trust our hosts and guests, to make sure that we know who those people are, what kind of actions they perform on our platform, that we can provide the services and the products that they're looking for when they land on Airbnb. And we also need to make sure that hosts and guests trust each other, because if you think about it, Airbnb interactions, they start online in the product, but they actually happen offline in the real world. But what is trust? Kind of the way that I define it for myself and the way that I explain it, it's the ability to trust, to rely on somebody for something for any number of reasons, primarily based on their experience, expertise, or on other reasons, really. Think about when you trust your bank, it's because you believe that they have years, decades of experience of handling money. Or if you trust your dentist or your doctor, that's because you believe that they have the experiences needed and they earn your trust, therefore. But how do you build trust? Well, there are a few ways you can do it. Through the experiences that we have together. Like I mentioned, if you go to a doctor and you have a great experience, you trust, you come back. In personal life as well, think about the closest people that you know. You've been through a lot together, goods and bads, and that's what makes this relationship, that connection happen and make you trust them more. And think about, your spouses, your parents, your children, you trust those people the most. We also build trust through the way we work together. I had this phrase more around the process earlier, but then after Cameron's talk, I decided to swap it out to the ways we work together. But essentially, it's the processes. It's the process we have in place in our work environment. And if you think about those experiences and the processes that we have in our work environment, those are interactions that we have with each other. And if we zoom out a little bit further, we can define macro interactions, which essentially is all the interactions that facilitate those relationships and essentially build trust between people that work together. But how do we facilitate those macro interactions during the design process specifically? As a designer, I think about that a lot, and I feel like there are some crucial moments during the design at the larger org where you can use them in order to build trust and build those relationships that oftentimes overlooked. And sometimes it's just easier to get carried away and start kind of being heads down and design and not really think about outside larger ecosystem you are in. And my talk really is about identifying those key moments and trying to bring awareness and bring those elevate those relationships and build trust between your teammates in your workplace. In order for us to look at this closer, let's look at the normal project cycle. It's obviously different for every company, for every team, even. For different people, depends on what works for you specifically, but if it's anything close to my work environment setup or anything close to kind of like larger org, then it's oftentimes goes like this. We set a goal as a team. We decide that's what we're going to be after. That's the goal that we need to achieve in order to be successful, whether it's moving a metric or trying to help our users. So we hear feedback from the user research. So we set a goal that this is going to be the project about reaching that goal. We brainstorm potential solutions. Oftentimes we go wide and we try to look at the problem from different angles, and we brainstorm how we potentially could solve that problem. At some point, we go to wireframing stage. So we try to wireframe some concepts. Some of them might be crazy and out there. Some of them might be very down-to-earth, kind of like obvious solutions and answers. So that happens usually on the wireframe stage. Maybe some user testing, early usability testing as well. We do designing. Obviously, you can do design specifically on the wireframes, like on specific concepts, or maybe more wide. I'm not going to go deep into the actual design process. Again, it's different for everyone. But on a high level, at some point, hopefully design happens. We collect feedback, and we launch. After lots of iterations, lots of work, lots of working, collaborating closely with your engineering team, we'll launch the product. But what about other functions? We work closely with product. And again, your team might be set up slightly differently, but overall, we work with engineering in order to make our design happen and actually reach the users. We work with data science. We work with content strategies that help us put the right words in our design. English is not my first language, as you can probably tell, so I work closely with a lot of content strategists in my day-to-day. We work with research for usability, for gathering user feedback, super crucial to make sure that the user is the center of your product. We work with multiple teams, and oftentimes those teams have different goals that might be actually quite orthogonal to the goals of your specific team. So you can see there's a lot going on here, right? So all these different pillars pull, the product might pull product in different directions. We're trying to navigate this whole system. We try to negotiate oftentimes. And so how do we build trust during such a complex process and being within such a complex environment? Well, what I learned and what I kind of tried to gather within in some sort of digestible format is I basically follow a few principles that help me understand how can I elevate trust, how can I build relationships with my team, and how can I show them that I care about the user, about the product just as much as they do, and how do we bring alignment to the team when so many things happen during the product development process, design and development. So what are those principles? The first one is align. And it's obviously important to align during every step of the way of your design process. But a couple crucial moments that I want to highlight today is align in the very beginning on your goal. Like make sure that you speak the same language, make sure that you pull everybody in the room, and make sure that you discuss and understand their point of view. It's super important. If you align on the goal from the very beginning, then going further and continue designing the product will be so much easier. So nobody's surprised at the end, like why are we building this? Why are we answering these questions? Make sure that you answer this in the very beginning. There's going to be a lot of controversial opinions. There's going to be multiple people, trying to thinking about different problems even, never mind solutions, but make sure that you bring that alignment in the beginning. And of course, on the feedback stage. So once you have some concepts ready, once you have some designs to share, super early drafts, make sure that you share it out and people can comment on them, people can give you feedback, and can course correct if needed. What are some things that you can employ as part of alignment principle? Well, you can create a project plan. Something that I learned is necessary for any project that I work on. Doesn't matter big or small. Doesn't matter if it's going to be over the course of a couple of weeks or multiple quarters. It's super important to create a project plan and share it out. You will be surprised how much you can learn and how much you realize sometimes that people were thinking about the same thing, but in a completely different way. Once you put it on paper, in a doc, you'll see that people comment and people talk about same things in different ways. And so making sure that you align on terminology, you align on the timeline, you align on what should be part of the project and what should not is super crucial, and project plan will help you with that alignment. Send daily updates. Sometimes you have to do it as often as every day. Make sure that your team and stakeholders know where you are in the process, what is the status. And as you go along and you do this more and more, you might not have to do it every day. But in the very beginning, once you start working with this team or specific team or on this specific project, might be as necessary as sending daily updates. Some people do it in the form of a stand-up, so it depends what works for you. And ask for feedback. Not just ask for feedback, but make sure you follow up on it. Make sure that your teammates know that you care, that their voice is heard, and that you take it seriously and you're very careful about following up on it. So going forward, it will build a lot of trust in you as a teammate, and you might not have to do it on a regular cadence. Just make sure that the most important parts of your project is being thought through, shared out, and feedback was received. Principle number 2 is to communicate, and I can really not stress this enough. Communicate is super important every step of the way as you design the product. Constantly communicate with your team. How can you do that? Well, do regular check-ins. A big chunk of time, especially in a large organization like Airbnb, is spent on making sure that everybody's on the same page about stuff. The communication should be clear and crisp, and if you have questions, you need to make sure that you answer questions if somebody asks them, or if you have questions for other people, find a person who will help you answer those questions. Send draft designs. It's really tempting as a designer to sometimes wait until this final version 15 is there, and that's the design that you share, because it's so tempting to kind of get this to a perfect state, which you probably know is never happens. You constantly change and adapt to the environment. The product changes a lot, and sometimes even constraints and requirements change as you design along the way. So make sure that you share draft design. Design is really a great way for people to come together and talk about the product that they're designing and building. Designer has just a skill, like really special ability to put an idea and make it something tangible, something that people can actually talk about. It's a point of sometimes discussion, sometimes contention, but it's really important to make sure that you are, as a designer, willing to embrace that challenge of being the person who puts this out there and asks for feedback and asks for opinions of other people who might be different from yours. So really embrace the challenge of being that person, being the person who makes the ideas tangible. Set up one-on-ones with your team. This is really essential to do with your PM and research and engineering partners, but also make sure that if you work with stakeholder teams or partner teams outside of your organization, outside of your immediate org, make sure that you check in with them as well. Oftentimes, their goals are different from yours, and making sure that you're still moving towards the same shared goal that you found in the beginning, hopefully during you set up your project plan, is super important to check in that it's still on track. Those are still the same goals, because their work, their product, their thinking will be changing constantly as well. It's evolving all the time. Accept the challenge. You will be challenged. As a designer, you will be challenged. You will be seeking feedback. You will be receiving feedback. You will be constantly in communication with your team. And it's a good thing, because that's how we as humans learn, when we challenge each other and when we act on the feedback. Things you can employ in place is being empathetic. When giving feedback, when somebody asks for your feedback, or you decide that it's necessary to provide feedback to somebody, be empathetic and really explain your point of view and where you're coming from. Be on point. Make sure that whenever you present something, don't zoom out too much. Give the right amount of context that is needed for this specific piece of work, and make sure that you stay on track, you don't derail the conversation. And be open-minded. People who give you feedback are here to help you. They are your teammates, they're your peers, they're moving towards the same shared goal. And so making sure that you are open-minded, that you understand that they're coming from a good place to help you is really important. And whether or not you act on the feedback, it's obviously up to you because you are the designer, ultimately the decision maker, but making sure that you follow up and explain your point of view, why you either acted on the feedback or not, is super important as well, because going forward, people will trust you more. They will trust your decision more, that you made certain decisions for the product because you are an expert. Support each other. Support each other during the brainstorming and feedback. So those are the two crucial moments that I wanted to highlight. But support means different things to different people. To some people, it's asking for feedback and asking to help them grow and asking, can you help me understand what is that I need to improve upon, or what is that I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing, for example. A lot of the time, support meaning to just showing up. When people ask to show up for a meeting, to brainstorm an idea, show up and help them figure out what is that they need in order to solve the problem. And if you're asked to help with that, that means that they truly value your expertise. And they'll probably do this more often if you do show up. How can we do this in practice? Run design sprints. Again, no matter how big or small the project is, I always try to bring designers from my immediate team and partner teams that I work with into the design sprint. This is such a great way to align everybody from the very beginning when you start the project on what the shared goal is and what are the ways we can solve it, because you'll be surprised how different teams with different parts of the product they work on, how can their opinion be on the same goal, on the same problem that you work on, how it can be different from yours because they come from completely different point of view. Invite stakeholder teams. Again, as part of my job, I work with a lot of teams outside of my immediate org, and making sure that I don't forget the fact that they might be completely, they have completely different goals, they have completely different set of metrics maybe in mind, or completely different set of users that they're trying to help. Well, it's very important for me to really understand their point of view and make sure that whatever the change to the product we make, whatever the new product we launch, is not going to break their system, is not going to break what they have in mind for and what they strive to achieve. And sign up for design crates. Again, once you have the designs ready to share, no matter how early drafts they are, make sure that you share them out and ask for feedback, as we talked at the previous principle. Make sure that you invite your stakeholder teams that will come and help you nail the solution that will be scalable and work for multiple products within one larger product. Set clear boundaries. That's a fun one. Don't touch my files, basically, right? On the design stage. And honestly, yes, that's what it's all about. Sometimes you need to step up and be really clear that you're a designer, you are the leader, you are responsible for the design. And the good thing about stepping up and claiming your ownership is you are basically the one who is taking responsibility for your decisions. You're the one who says, I know how to design the products, and I think I'll learn everything there is to learn. I run design sprint, I have a plan, I follow the plan, I ask for feedback, so I think I am the one ultimately responsible for the decisions for the design. Let the experts lead. You work with engineering, who make ultimately the decisions on the technology. You work with research, who come up with research plans that they think the most suitable for this type of research, usability or questionnaire or in-person study or remote study. Let them figure out what is the best way to approach that. They are experts in the research part. We work closely with product. Ultimately, product makes a lot of decisions. Product and design lines are often blurry, and design oftentimes need to step up and put PM's hat when necessary to make sure that there's certain functions work closely in collaboration in order to achieve what the designer has in mind. But ultimately, let people who are responsible for certain areas of the product or certain stages of the product lead the way. I really like working closely with operations, and it's really interesting to see how everything outside of digital product, the offline world, how they really navigate it so smoothly, and they can always teach me so much more about the product that I don't really know, because they really know what happens in the offline world once the user actually makes a reservation and goes to travel to places. So I learned a lot from the operations expert, for example. Give the right context. When you share your designs, really make sure that you set clear context, what is in scope, what is out of scope, so people don't give you feedback on stuff that is not really relevant to your specific design that you're asking for feedback on. So it sounds like you know exactly what you were solving for. Especially within the larger product, oftentimes you have much more to talk about than just this specific area, but set the large context that, hey, this was in scope of my project, this was not, but we will consider that for the future brainstorming and potentially future projects. And respect the decisions. Yes, ultimately, once your experts, once your peers, your partners on your team make decisions, again, research, engineering, data science, operations, respect their decisions, because ultimately they're experts, and hopefully by seeing how much you respect their decision, they will trust you make design decisions as well. And celebrate each other, celebrate your team, celebrate your peers, really every step of the way, because you work so hard to make sure that the product works for your users, to design the solution. Your engineers work super hard to make that happen. Make sure that you celebrate each other. We have a tool at Airbnb that it's like a plugin that every time you open a browser window, like a new tab, it reminds you that, oh, is there somebody you want to celebrate today, or is there somebody you want to send appreciation to? And so people send appreciations to each other for stuff like, thanks for organizing a movie night, all the way to thanks for helping me brainstorming that solution in the design sprint last week. I would not be able to do it without you. Multiple people thinking and tackling one problem when they're moving towards the shared goal is so much more productive and fun, really, than when it's just one person. Even if you don't have plugins, sending emails, coming to your peer in person and really saying that you appreciate how hard they work, and they made the CSS transition possible, the one that you designed in Framer, and you thought it was crazy and you just did it for fun, but they actually built it. Really saying thank you for your hard work will really come a long way. And don't forget your leaders. Managers need recognitions too. They trust you. They trust your decisions. They trust that you're going to do what's best for the product and for the user. So really make sure that you appreciate your leaders as much as you do your peers or your reports. So if I wanted to summarize this all, if I wanted you guys to walk away from this talk with a few things in mind, I would really want you to remember these 6 principles. Align with your team early and often, but make sure that you follow up along the way. Communicate, really every step of the way, communicate. And unless you're told, don't send me any more emails with your status update. I know what you're doing, and I know exactly where you are, and I know that I can trust you to go off and do your thing. Really, it never hurts to over-communicate with your team, especially if you work in a larger org. Accept the challenge. You will be challenged as a designer. That's 100% true. So just accept that fact and know that this is how you grow. This is how you learn and how you become a better designer and a better teammate, really. Support each other. If you ask for feedback, give it. Find time to give it. Find time to come in person, or whatever it is that you think that is the best way to do it. Write an email. Find a way to support each other. it's going to go a long way in building trust and better relationships with your team. Set clear boundaries. Don't touch my files. Just remember that one. And celebrate each other. Celebrate each other and elevate work of each other on the team, and that would help, hopefully, your team to run faster and smoother and not question each other's decisions. So ultimately, it'll be a more pleasurable way to work and more, hopefully, fun place to work as well. So I'm really always happy to talk about building relationships in the workplace and, talk about teaching people and learning from other people, because this is really a continuous journey. So thank you so much for having me today. It was great, and feel free to shoot me an email or tweet at me. I'm Julia Khusainova. Thank you so much.